right, you're welcome back. It's time now for us to focus on the front page and things that caught our attention over the past week. I know I did mention that the Olympics have sort of diverted or distracted us from a lot of things, but a lot has still been happening in the country. And I have here with me Nifemi Oguntoye. Thanks for being here today.
Good afternoon. Good
we have a lot that's been happening in Nigeria. A week in Nigeria is like a year in a lot of countries. So much happens in a day in this country. But let's start with President Buhari now. And he did mention during the week that Nigeria was now a poor country. We also got news that South Africa has taken back their position as the biggest economy on the continent. It's been one bad news after the other, especially with regards to the economy. People are excited or at least happy with regards to security for the most part, especially in the northeast, even if the herdsmen issue is still a problem. Niger Delta still has the bombing issue going on, but at least for the most part, the bombings have stopped. Corruption seems to be tackled, but the economy is, for want of a better word, a mess. So what are your thoughts, and are we in this for the long run?
First of all, we must know that it's not the first time we hear Mr. President say that Nigeria has gone poor. To be honest with you, before he became president, a barrel of oil was selling for about $100, and then it just dive to $37, and it now hovers between $40 and $45 as we speak. It is no doubt a clarion call, the need for Nigeria to begin to diversify. Unfortunately, it's not also the first time we've been talking about this and why it is important for government to prioritize the need to diversify the economy. But there are lots of people who are saying that it's not good time for excuses, especially for an administration.
Exactly. Sorry, just to cut you off there, because I mean, we talk a lot about the oil prices and how things are bad. And Angola is a very interesting test case for us. I mean, Angola was also a one-commodity economy. Yes, their population might not be as large as ours, but they don't seem to be in such a problem as we are, which is that people are pointing to the fact that maybe the economic policies of this government is also to blame.
Yes, a lot of people are asking what exactly is the economic blueprint of this administration that seem to have come so forcefully fighting corruption. A lot of questions are also being asked as what is being used with the whole lot of money, the perception Nigerians have that the Buhari administration is getting. Just recently, the vice president was in Lagos and he talked about dishing out about 100 billion naira for capital projects. He was quoted to have said that as it is now, the federal government had even given more money for capital projects than the whole chunk of money they gave last year. But then the question is how much of this is being, is metamorphosizing into practical development. Talk about power, talk about roads, infrastructures, and the rest. But then it also brings to mind Nigerians need to start asking questions, because before you close your eyes, before you call Jack Robinson, 4 years is gone, and then Buhari will have to answer if indeed he has fulfilled all the promises that he made for Nigeria. So it's a question of economic blueprint, the way the dollar is rising. It's just hovering between 405 and 410. It's unbelievable. And if it keeps going at this rate, I mean, who knows what might happen?
Yeah, I mean, it gets very worrying for a lot of people, especially, I mean, there doesn't seem to be a clear-cut agenda for a lot of people. People don't seem to know what economic direction is. We have a CBN governor who almost always changes policy every week. We don't know what might happen next week with regards to interest rates, with regards to the foreign exchange market, and or whatever new policy might come out of there. So there seems to be this confusion, and people are not sure. So, and the year is pretty much over, and we have maybe 2.5 years before campaign starts again. Are we going to come out of this poor Nigeria anytime soon?
Be sure that Nigerians remain optimistic. The kind of inflation you find in the market now is unbelievable. But then the reaction isn't as wild as what it would have been if it had happened 2 years ago under a totally different administration. So it's also perhaps a sign that there is still a little measure of optimism amongst Nigerians that, well, Buhari is perhaps the most righteous man in quotes that we have running government, and things might just change anytime soon. And also believe that there's this a whole lot of superstitious and spiritual belief going on in Nigeria. Nigerians believe if you keep praying, if you pray hard enough, then maybe things are going to get better. But I also share in that optimism, because the economic team seem to give us a posture that we are busy. Nigerians, don't worry, we're about to make a miracle happen.
Well, we'll move from that now and go on to the National Assembly, which continues to have its drama with especially the House of Representatives and the Speaker and the former Chairman of the House Committee on Appropriation. If EFCC, of course, has gotten involved. The Speaker did say that pardoning was not a crime and that he cannot be investigated. We're not sure what's really going on there. Are you okay with the way things have gone so far? Do you think heads should have rolled by now?
The 8th National Assembly is perhaps going to go down in history as the most controversial in Nigeria, especially at the time where we have an administration that is telling Nigerians that, hey, we're here to fight corruption. And prior to this time, you must also have heard the opposition party saying you only pick up your enemies, especially those in the People's Democratic Party, and you prosecute them. Now, the most amazing part is that the last time I checked, not even a single person has been prosecuted, as the case may be. We'll just see people prosecuted on the front page of the paper. So when the issue of budget pardon came up, trust Nigerians, they were excited to know that someone within the APC camp is now being indicted. But then if you also study the story, you will know that there's a lot of mysteries shrouding the content and you know of this development. Where was what's his name now, Jibrin, before he was sacked as chairman of the appropriation committee? And then now that the speaker is also saying that pardon is not corruption, reminds you of what would have happened if this has gone to the court. You expect to see lots of senior advocates of Nigeria, of course, defining pardon to you and letting you know that there might be nothing wrong really in it. But you must bring it back to local parlance and talk about morals and talk about what exactly is that over 200 billion naira that has been reported to have been added to the budget is meant for. But then it's also a big test on the character of the presidency. Lots of reports saying that, oh, Mr. President has an audience with the Speaker of the House of Representatives, but hasn't given the other guy a chance to speak. So Nigerians are patiently waiting to see. Well, there's a body language now from the federal government that came out recently to say that, well, the budget we passed was not pardoned. But it was the same president who said outside Nigeria that he was not pleased with the pardon development and even redeployed over 200 workers in that department. So we're watching with close hands to see how all of this play out. But it's really going to be a big dent on the anti-corruption stance of Mr. President, especially now that the Speaker has refused to honor the invitation by the Nigerian police.
Still talking. You talk about a big dent in the national, in the hands of the government, and I want to go away from the anti-corruption fight now and the National Assembly and talk about health.
Okay.
And something that has also become sort of a big dent. We're celebrating that we're polio-free for 2 years.
That's right.
And then we did hear news during the week that we had 2 new cases in Borno State again, and it looks like our fight against the eradication of polio still continues.
Well, but sure that the critics of this administration are cashing on it. First, they're saying that now we're no longer the largest economy in Africa prior to the ascension of the APC government, and now we're discovering about 2 cases of polio in Borno State. I think it's a two-sided thing if you're going to analyze. The first is that the fact that it was discovered is also a plus for Nigeria, that perhaps we have a response mechanism that is actually active and to ensure that we can discover all of these cases. Don't forget that our borders are still very much porous, so it's easy to import this virus into Nigeria at any time. And also bearing in mind the kind of magical response we had when Ebola hit Lagos, then we can be sure that it might not be as much of a challenge as we are looking at it. It's just a question of what is going to be done at this time to ensure that this is nipped at the bud.
So how do we tackle that? Because I mean, we've been fighting this fight for as long as Nigeria has been, and it took us this long to get to the point where we got. Are we sure this is the last of the 2 cases again? What happens if more cases?
Not very likely, because all of these things are intertwined. For instance, now, just a few days ago, it was World Diarrhea Day, and it was mentioned that Nigeria remains one of the 5 countries in the world that has the highest number of mortality, especially amongst children below 5, who die over 1 million that die yearly of that disease. But all of these viruses and infections and diseases are connected to the quality of life in these countries. We're talking about third world countries. And then you see all of these cases coming up from northern Nigeria that is notorious for underdevelopment over the years. So until we have a government that is serious, that is dealing with all of those infrastructures that is needed to upgrade the life of these people, we might just be in and out as often as it can be.
Hopefully, I mean, it's not very exciting news. We do hope that this becomes the exception, and we'll continue our.
We have to remain optimistic.
Yeah, I guess you took the words from my mouth. Let's go to sports now, and it probably has been the biggest news all week, even though Nigeria hasn't registered themselves on the medals table yet. I mean, we had football, we had an unfortunate incident in tennis, which with table tennis, Aruna Quadri was doing us so proud, and then he met the world number one. We've had athletics, Okagbare have all disappointed us. I mean, we sort of knew that it was going to be the case, especially with regards to how our preparations were. There's been a couple of interesting or exciting stories. Chierika Ukogu from rowing, who got to the semi-finals. We have Efia Jagba from boxing, who knocked out his opponent last night. The footballers, of course, are onto the semi-finals. Hopefully, they are going to be sure of a medal in one of those things. The wrestlers are still going to be coming on in a couple of days. I mean, it's looking quite exciting in some aspects. But this Minister of Sports, or the Ministry of Sports, continues to gather controversy. We did hear that the football team were locked out of their hotel rooms or something along those lines. They didn't have bills. Their bills are not paid. They staged a protest because they weren't paid their allowances. We still hear the stories in 2016. How does this tie up with the perception of the Buhari government and the way athletes are being treated?
It's not the first time it's happening. It's just a question of, is anything really changing? You recall that after the Olympics, sometimes I think in 2012, the president then had a conference and then brought all stakeholders, major sports stakeholders together, asking the question, what is really wrong in sports in Nigeria? Doled out quite a huge amount of money, but yet nothing happened. But interestingly, is the spirit that our sportmen portray outside there, irrespective of the challenges. Recall that in 1996, the Dream Team had the same challenge with flying, to that competition, and it eventually came back with a gold medal. As a matter of fact, there are people who are saying that it's possible we have a repeat of that, because
so we should always start wrong.
It was the same Delta airline that took them there, and then they got gold. Well, that's just on a light note, but it portrays and it shows the fact that perhaps the federal government has not really changed the system, because there are people who are asking, who indeed are these people who are in charge of this sport sector? Are they really technocrats? Do they really know what they're doing, or they were just compensated, politically? And until we begin to bring people who have the experience, who have the technical know-how to, preside over this aspect of government or aspect of our life, we might still be a long way from getting there.